50 men left Troy, one ship, 10 long years from home. 10 brutal years of open sea still lay between them and home. Yet every one of those 50 men would die somewhere on the voyage back. Not from sea monsters, not from divine punishment, from hunger. Because the Pentaconter was built for speed and raiding, not storage. It carried 50 oarsmen and remarkably little food on board. Every single night of the voyage, the whole crew had to beach the ship, to find food and water on the shore, or simply not wake up at all. This is the real story hidden beneath all the mythology you know. The Pentaconter was built as a war tool, nothing more than that. Approximately 30 meters long and only 4 meters wide. 25 oarsmen heaving against their oars on each side of the hull. Capable of 9 knots in favorable Mediterranean conditions. Built specifically for conducting coastal raids and rapid escape. Not for hauling months of food and supplies across open water. There was no cargo hold below, no storage compartment at all. Just timber, oars, 50 bodies, and whatever fit between them. Now consider the nutrition mathematics of this whole situation. A man rowing hard through open water burns thousands of calories. 50 oarsmen need roughly 250,000 calories daily. Per day, that is too much food for any warship to carry aboard. You simply cannot carry anywhere near that much food on a ship like this. So instead, they carried just enough to survive between landings. Paximati, an incredibly dense dry bread that lasted at sea. Dried salted fish and hardtack meat packed tight into cloth. And numerous clay amphorae of wine that were not for celebration. Greek sailors mixed their wine with 3 to 5 parts of fresh water. Because it was the only drink on board that was safe enough to use. Sea water and raw spring water could both kill a man within days. The alcohol sterilized the water and kept the crew from disease. Wine was survival, not pleasure. It was the water supply. And here was the one survival rule that governed everything. Beach the ship every single night on shore, no matter what the cost. Find shore, find fresh water, hunt game or fish the coast. Cook the food, sleep, load the remaining provisions, and sail by dawn. Break that routine just once, and your crewmen start dying off. Odysseus knew this rule from the day the fleet left burning Troy. He understood it better than anyone else in his entire command. But understanding the rule and enforcing it on your surviving men. Knowing the rule and making hungry men obey it were two different things. Their first landfall was Ismaris, the Sicyones' territory. They raided the village and seized all the wine, food, and livestock. Odysseus gave the order to abandon the position before nightfall. The men refused to leave. There was too much food to abandon yet. They feasted on the open beach throughout the entire night instead. By morning, the Sicyones had brought 900 armed men to fight. In the fight that followed, they lost exactly 72 crewmen. 72 men eliminated in just the opening week at sea. The cause, a feast, a night of excess and broken discipline. Discipline around food was simply the price of survival at sea. Then the storms came, and discipline alone wasn't enough to help them. Zeus sent 9 days of storm and drove the fleet far off course. 9 days adrift, no land in sight and no way to resupply. The wine amphorae were going fast, so was the Paximati. And here is the particular cruelty of thirst experienced at sea. You're surrounded by water you absolutely cannot drink or use at all. The Mediterranean barely generates any rainfall in summer. You carry what you carry and silently calculate if it will last. On the 10th day of drifting, they reached the Lotus Eaters' coastline. Odysseus sent 3 scouts inland to find fresh water and food. The scouts met the locals and consumed the lotus fruit they offered. Immediately they forgot everything: the mission, the ship, their home. Odysseus physically dragged all three of them back by force to the oars. The real danger wasn't the lotus fruit itself, not exactly. It was the psychological collapse of crewmen who had simply given up. Men pushed beyond their endurance threshold stopped fighting to survive. And Odysseus had watched exactly that happening before his own eyes. The Cyclops came next, and at first it looked like a chance at rescue. That cave wasn't just a dwelling, it was something far more useful. It was a fully stocked Bronze Age food depot, and nothing less. Cheese on racks, fresh milk in pots, young goats penned up. Odysseus recognized at once exactly what he was looking at. His plan was simple: take the food and leave before dark fell. But the crew convinced him to stay and wait for additional food supplies. Perhaps a gift, a steady source of food and fresh cold milk. The owner returned after sunset. It didn't go as they had hoped. They escaped the cave, but left 6 crewmen behind inside forever. The same deadly pattern, playing out around a food supply again. The pattern was obvious by now, though the survivors couldn't see it. Every time food discipline collapsed, they lost crewmen permanently. Every time Odysseus enforced the rules, the crew made it through. Then came Thrinacia, sacred isle of Helios, the sun god. Odysseus begged the surviving crew not to anchor anywhere near it. But violent storms pinned the entire vessel to the island for a month. They consumed every provision they had aboard, every last crumb. And then the hardest decision point of the entire voyage arrived. Eurylochus, the first officer, then stood up and made his case. "We will die here by slow starvation," he told the assembled crew. "Better to drown at sea by the gods' wrath than starve here on land." Brutal logic under the circumstances, and dangerously wrong. They slaughtered the sacred cattle through the long night while Odysseus slept. He woke to the unmistakable smell of cattle roasting on the ground. And in that particular moment, he understood none of them would make it. They feasted through the night, then quietly loaded their vessel at dawn. Zeus unleashed a fierce storm before they could escape those waters. The mast broke first, then the hull cracked, then the crew drowned. Every man who ate that sacred meal died in the water that day. Not because the gods were especially vindictive, not exactly. Because starving men who finally get to eat make the worst decisions. They sailed straight into the violent storm they should never have faced. Odysseus ended up spending the next 7 years on Calypso's island. Most people see it as captivity, a trap set by the goddess. But look at what that island actually offered this exhausted man. Fresh water, fruit trees, good fishing, a shelter to sleep in. For the first time in a decade, he was not rationing his survival. He wasn't watching another crewman die over a shared food supply. 7 years wasn't imprisonment, it was genuine recovery. He chose to leave only after recovering the strength to try again. And this time he reached Ithaca, alone, with no crew to lose. 50 left Troy, 1 came home, the one who understood food.